Welcome to the Conscious Millionaire Limitless Performer Show, episode number 29.
Hi, this is Dr. Ron Stotz, author of Leadership on the Leading Edge and founder of Ron Stotz International. Today's show, I'm going to discuss how consciousness is the key to inspired leadership.
And I'll start with a question. Do you want to think like Einstein or create like Michelangelo? Now, I bet you do. And that's why my featured guest today guides entrepreneurs just like you, business leaders, on a transformational inner journey of developing integrated whole brain thinking and accessing big mind. He's a leadership expert, best-selling author, and international speaker, Dr. Ron Stotz. Dr. Stotz, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But I'm very excited. You're hailing from Washington, which is a beautiful area of the world. I love the state of Washington. And, I want to dig right in and find out why you took your own transformational journey, because you've written multiple books, you work with leaders in all kinds of companies, and you help them become more conscious. And in becoming more conscious, you have the research to prove they actually build their business much bigger, much faster. But what was it about this whole journey that you've been taking that intrigued you in the first place?
Great question. A little difficult sometimes to look back on all that. But I was a U.S. rowing champion at 19 and feeling cocky and wonderful, and went in the Marine Corps in 67, and my whole world just got shaken. I really was physically fit and ready to take on anything, but mentally I realized that I really wasn't designed to become a world-class killer, and that's what they had created out of me. And I had a physical injury, so I did get out of the Marine Corps after about a year, and but I was a mess. There's a lot of words I could add to that before mess, but yeah, I was a complete mess. I was suicidal. I had chemical imbalances. And so within all of that.
I just want to reflect on that for a moment. So it sounds like you got into a situation, my take on what you just said, that was not authentic for your soul path. And that's what caused all the conflict.
Yeah, I think I went in the Marine Corps thinking it was just another physical activity, another sport. Right. And I was loving it in the beginning. I won the physical fitness award. I was like, okay, here we are.
Boot camp was great.
Yeah. But then the reality, I literally, one morning on the rifle range, they had been having the typical circle targets up, and all of a sudden the silhouette of a human being popped up in front of me. And in my little 19-year-old mind, I realized that what I was becoming was a killer of human beings, and I had never thought about that.
Right. No,
I
of course.
Stood up, I threw my white rifle into the mud. Every part of my being just resisted and put that away. And of course, my drill sergeants didn't quite see it that way. So they were quite physically, mentally, spiritually abusive for quite some time. And all of that really just took me to a deeper level of knowing that I was in the wrong place, going in the wrong direction. And so that, I was really on the track to be the all-American boy. Everything was just, peaches and cream.
And so they told you being an all-American boy meant you were going to kill other people. And so that sounds like it was a linchpin for you to go off on another journey.
And of course, in 67, the world was changing anyway. So I really had the chance to let go of all the beliefs and all that I'd really learned and reevaluate and see what were the beliefs that I felt deeply about. What did I want? How did I want to design my life? Who did I want to become? And that sounds like a piece of cake, but the truth is I was really in bad shape. And it started with me going up to an old cabin that we had on an island and, sticking my feet in the wood stove and reading all sorts of books that I could find to see if I could find some hope, some path, some direction.
So out of that, what direction did you find?
I found the gift of silence. I found the gift of breathing, and not even really consciously in the beginning, but I just noticed what was really transforming me was just being present with myself in that on this island, being present with my breathing, going out for walks in nature. And I began to really come up with a lot of ways to help redevelop my brain, redevelop who and what I was all about. And those tools, I went on to get a PhD in psychology and, chiropractic doctor, but those tools became the tools that I used to heal. And of course, with a lot of help from others. But all of those tools then became the tools I transformed into developing, helping others.
So transformational inner journey, why is it you do that kind of work with entrepreneurs and leaders? How does it help them as a business? I understand how it helps them. I've lived at a Buddhist monastery. In fact, I love your comment about quiet. My favorite sound is silence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll give a shout out to Sirius Radio. I love it, but I always have it off because I'd rather drive in silence because I find it more soothing to my soul. It is my favorite sound is silence.
Yeah.
So tell us about the inner transformational journey that you take entrepreneurs on and why that's a benefit for them.
Well, what I found was that when leaders would come to me, a lot of times they were just dealing with old fears and limitations that really turned out to have been developed in childhood. So a lot of the work that I do with them is help them understand where they come from and how to acknowledge, express, and release any emotions that they just weren't able to heal when they were a child. And what I learned really early on is, as an infant, we're just completely helpless. And so we're looking outside of ourselves for everything. We're looking outside to our caretakers to take care of us. And that's just a habit that people continue. They continue to look outside of themselves, unfortunately, for answers that can only be found within. And
what's interesting about that comment, because as a mindset and strategy coach, I start with mindset and I tell everyone, if you really want to stop being a 5, 6, or 7-figure entrepreneur and become a 7 or 8-figure entrepreneur, those are the people I work with, you've got to shift your consciousness. You have to shift your mindset. But you can't, people come and I want you to hear this today very clearly, what Ron and I are saying. Most entrepreneurs and most of what they buy on the internet is not the number one thing they need. They buy the whistles, the bells, the external, that the problem is outside of them. They've got to redo their marketing problem. They've got to redo their funnel. And my comment is you may need to redo your marketing plan and you may need to redo your funnel, but it's actually not the problem.
Right.
The problem at core is that you need to go to a different level than you're at right now.
Yeah, they find
and that's the only way you can see your business differently.
Yeah, the quick fixes, the shiny objects might be relevant, but they're not the answer. And it's in really investing in yourself and really developing and becoming a person who plays on a higher level of consciousness that allows you to really develop and raise the ability of your company, which of course then affects the world and allows us to become a more conscious, caring world.
Well, and you have a program, and we'll talk about that more, creating your inspired life, that really is about this kind of work.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how have you found the relationship between increasing your consciousness and literally raising the level of your mindset and your consciousness inside to your business growing faster?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really quite simple. If the cortex, the higher thinking mind, is really where you want to be coming from. You really want to have the forebrain running your brain. And what happens is if you've got stress, if you've got concerns, if you've got emotional backlog, all of those things really keep us being run by our amygdala, our emotional center, which is really dramatic and overreactive. And so it's really about quieting our mind. And that's why I do that healing work, is so that we can quiet our mind, integrate the brain, really access the best of who and what we are in that brain so that you have higher levels of thinking. You really, your ability to, your creative abilities, your imagination, your intuition, all of those things are enhanced as you quiet the mind. And so they, of course, are able to make better business decisions. They make better, they're more, that are in a relationship with themselves, because it's not uncommon for people. You know, I had one guy who goes like, what about this love stuff? I don't love myself and I'm doing fine. I was like, oh my God, we've got to change. But
oh, I love that comment, because really it's just a question of where you want to go. You know, my private clients that I work with, there's just this exclusive group of 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs. Not only are they going to pay me well, but I have requirements. And one of the requirements is you must meditate.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes when someone hasn't been meditating, so let's address that right now, they'll say, I don't have time for that because that's another thing in their schedule. Yeah. And I go, well, actually, you don't have time not to do it, because it's the meditation that expands the space in your mind, kind of empties it out. And now there's space for new ideas to come in from the big mind, from higher ideas. The same thing Steve Jobs, you know, as we all know, there was no focus group for the iPhone. Right. Steve downloaded it. Yeah. You know, and it was a brilliant download. And I'm very glad. And I'm one of those guys who constantly buys a new one, right? Because it did enhance my life. And that's what we can do as entrepreneurs. But tell me from your perspective, how the meditation piece particularly makes a dramatic difference in productivity, not just productivity, because that's kind of basal, but the level of inspired thought, and therefore the vision and the results that someone can get as a leader or entrepreneur of their business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the truth is, the quieter your mind, the more successful you'll be. I really see a direct analogy to that, because you really are accessing information that otherwise isn't available. I mean, that's the truth of it. You might go, I see a lot of people, they get stuck into, well, if I just try harder, if I just work harder, and it's like, no, that's what's shutting off, literally chemically shutting off your brain. That's what's cutting you off from accessing those more resourceful, creative, and imaginative parts of yourself. So there is the fellow I was just talking about, for example, he's got, 5, 9-figure businesses, but within 2 months, he is restructuring all of those businesses. Within 1 year, he is doubling the value of those businesses, all because he's got to think in terms of consciousness. Is really, it starts off with self-awareness of your feelings, your thoughts, your level of consciousness. But as you continue to evolve in your consciousness, you become aware of others. You become aware of even well beyond others. And that allows you to really access information that allows you to see everything differently. Your level of consciousness determines how you perceive and experience everything that comes into your life. So if you're in a higher, more expanded level of consciousness, you're seeing things from a higher level that allows you to understand the inner workings of everything on a much more successful level. And that's why they're more successful. They see what it takes to bring others into, and how they can serve others in becoming the leaders that they need to be, so that their leadership can continue to evolve also. And so there's a direct correlation to your perspective, your level of consciousness, and your thinking, your ideas, if you have a product or a widget or whatever you're offering, you're doing it in a way that's more supportive for everyone involved. And all of a sudden, everyone really wants to participate, and that includes clients and everyone else. So you're offering them a playing ground that's much more interesting than most others that are out there. You're offering them a way to become more conscious themselves.
One of the profound experiences I had early on when I went and lived at a Buddhist monastery was the experience. I mean, it's one thing intellectually to read a lot of books and spiritual books and conscious books and say we're all one. all right? And that's true. But if it's just intellectual, it's just intellectual. But I found that for me, meditation was the best way to literally become and experience the oneness.
Yeah.
And then my experience of everyone around me was different.
Yeah, information is not transformation.
Right.
And transformation comes out of significant personal experiences, significant transformational experiences, and ongoing practices. And that's where your meditation, that's where your yoga, your Tai Chi. If you're not doing you can have these amazing transformational experiences, but if you're not then living a lifestyle that has these built-in support processes going on, it'll dissipate. You'll lose it. You'll keep it to some degree, but you really have to. Your whole life has to be built on a support system that allows you to continue to change, because change is the one reality that we can count on.
Well, and that was maybe my biggest takeaway from my experiences in Buddhism. I mean, I've studied Christianity, I've studied, lots of different domains, but is that change is the essence of reality.
Right. And one of the biggest things I hear about in higher level leadership is the only people that can make it is in all the rapid change and increased complexity that we're dealing with, is you have to be very agile. Well, to be very agile, you have to be very present. To be very present, you have to be breathing and not be dealing with a lot of emotional backlog. You have to be present you have to have full access to this receiver, being able to access information from a much wider band than you would if you were just coming from that more fear-based, scarcity-based way of thinking.
We're here with Dr. Ron Stotz. We're going to be right back, and we're going to discuss his program, Creating Your Inspired Life. We'll be right back. Attention 5- and 6-figure purpose-driven entrepreneurs, coaches, service providers, tired of making far less than you're worth, feeling overwhelmed by not having specific money-making steps to rapidly grow your sales and profits? Is this the year you want to impact more people and reach your next money milestone? Make $250,000, $500,000, even your first $1 million or more in sales? Then join me for the First Million Masterclass, where I'll teach you the exact 3 secrets you must have to literally 100 times the probability that you can get rich changing the world. Claim your seat right now in my live masterclass and get your questions answered. Go to consciousmillionaire.com/First Million Masterclass. That's right. Sign up right now at consciousmillionaire.com/First Million Masterclass. Again, go to consciousmillionaire.com/First Million Masterclass. See you at the First Million Masterclass. Welcome back. I'm J.V. Crum III. I'm the host of the Conscious Millionaire Limitless Show, and I'm here with our featured guest, Dr. Ron Stotz. Ron, tell us about Creating Your Inspired Life, what that program's about, and how people can go access it.
Creating Your Inspired Life is really, it's a program I've been doing for decades, and what it really does is introduce people to themselves. It literally introduces them through the questions and the discussions and the insights and the processes that I use. It allows them to really go down and rediscover their childhood, rediscover the influences that have really helped them or guided them into becoming who they are. A lot of times what happens in childhood is there's parts of ourselves that just aren't acceptable. There might be feelings that we express that aren't acceptable. There might be ways of being, just maybe being in our power or whatever. But we shove all those things down and become who's most accessible, because every child wants love more than anything else, and they want unconditional love more than anything else. So they come up with this program for getting love to optimize that amount of love they can get within that family of origin. So I think that's great when you're 5, it's great when you're 10, But as you move into your teens and into your 20s and 30s, you really have to have shifted that program for getting love from one of looking outside for everything you need to one of looking inside, looking within. And that's really the core of this program is learning to look within yourself for the answers that you're seeking. And also, of course, as that happens, as we mentioned earlier, your brain becomes quiet, it becomes more integrated. So you have whole brain integrated thinking, which just is a real game changer. You're really upgrading your brain, upgrading your ability to not only perceive the world around you, but to relate in a much more successful way in that world.
I know from many people who I hear from the 24-hour challenge is one of your favorite parts of the show. Ron, could you give a 24-hour challenge for everyone listening today?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I would have them go to my website at ronstotz.com, and right there on the homepage, one of the primary boxes is going to be 9 insightful questions. And these are really designed for entrepreneurs to understand what they really want, what's blocking them from what they really want, and that gap in between, understanding it, so that they can begin that inner exploration that allows them and will allow them to move forward. They really get a good opportunity to see what you're at the effect of and how to move beyond it.
And if you're unable to write that down, no worries. You always know, go to your headquarters, consciousmillionaireshow.com. Just scroll down to today's title, Consciousness is the Key to Inspired Leadership. And we'll have the link to that, the 9 insightful questions, directly on the show notes as well. And right now, I just want to reach out and I want to give you an energetic hug, because we all need more hugs today, especially as we go through a pandemic that seems to go on forever. And, I just want you to know I love you, I care about you, and I support you being on this planet to make your true impact. And we want to help you make it bigger, put more money in the bank, and get a life that's truly happy, authentic, and fulfilling for you. And now it's time for the Conscious Millionaire Limitless questions. And Ron, we always start with mindset because I think that's where everything begins. And you can think of mindset and consciousness as all part of the same inner world. What's the mindset you developed that helps you discover your best business opportunities?
I would say the mindset, which comes from breathing and being present and having a quiet mind, is really one of looking at not only what's best for me, but what's best for everybody in the particular circumstances that I'm involved in. I really find that if it's just self-serving, that it really doesn't serve myself as fully as it can if I've included in working cooperatively with others. So the mindset is one of, I am one with the others that I'm participating with. And the more you can get feedback from them, the more you can be communicating with them and find out what their needs are, the better you'll be doing.
Well, what I was hearing as you said that, Ron, is that it's higher self and higher other. What's in the highest and best interest of all concerned? That's what I was hearing.
It really is. And that's, earlier we talked about how the brain and, without doing the healing, you're really run by the amygdala, the emotional center. As you quiet the mind and integrate the brain, the forebrain takes over. And the forebrain really sees and responds to everything from that higher place, from not only what's better for me, but what is better for everybody, because that is what's better for me. And really learning to trust that.
Well, absolutely. And it's that trusting yourself and trusting higher consciousness and trusting big mind. They're all part of this internal journey. All of us as entrepreneurs get stuck at times. It doesn't matter if you're running a 5, 6, 7, 8-figure business or you're running $1 billion business, you'll get stuck, and so will the people working with you. What's one strategy for breaking through a stuck point?
I think stopping, taking a step back, breathing, looking within at what you're feeling, what the circumstances are, really evaluating them from a quiet, present place, and seeing what your best next step is. and taking that step, and then breathing, quiet in your mind, being present, evaluating, and seeing what your best next step is then, and continue that. That could actually become a lifestyle.
Yes, it could. And it's really, it sounds like it's the process of looking on as opposed to being in the picture. So you're able to step back and have a meta position.
I think it allows you, when you're in that present place, that's not a place of fear and scarcity. It's a place of abundance. It's a place of I'm connected with everything. And it's from that place where that's where big mind comes in. All I have to do is say, this is what I'm looking for. And then it'll come in. It really will. If I trust, if I stay quiet and centered, it'll come to me every time.
How can entrepreneurs access more of their potential?
Well, all the things that we've been talking about. One is they have to heal their past, become present. They need to upgrade their brain, literally neurologically rewiring their brain and getting it quieter and quieter so that they, what happens is you're really changing the frequency of your brain. And as you change that frequency, there's an alpha bridge that gets created from the different levels of frequency that give you a broader and broader access to information beyond what we would normally have. I think of the brain as a receiver. And the first part of my work is really getting that receiver all tuned up, tuned in, and ready to go. So it's really capable of receiving information. Second part of my work is really more about, okay, now that you've got this receiver, let's learn how to access that information from a much broader perspective than trying and efforting and books and that, because there's just, you know, it's like, I remember once I have a hobby called, I design and build Japanese gardens, and a fellow who I was working with, he was the CEO of a tech company in San Francisco, and he said, he found out I did that as a hobby. He goes, oh, I've got to have one for my wife. And he, of course, it was a 1 acre garden, and he wanted to spend $1 million on it. And it was a little overwhelming, to be honest with you. Plus, I was in the middle of my successful practice, and I was like, where do I have the time for this? And so I just went up on, you know, I was living in the Bay Area at the time. I went up on a hill behind my home and sat on an old driftwood bench that I'd built. And I just said, okay, these are the folks that I want to create it for. This is my intention to transform their life in what I present them with. And this is the garden in this space. I spent the next hour and a half just in that quiet place, watching that information come in, watching that garden being designed. And it was running, you know, it won international and national awards 3 months later. And I see that with all of my clients. They can sit, you know, once they've gone through this work and really transform their brain. You know, one guy needed a different hinge for delivery system on modular homes that he's building. And so he just sat there and put it out there that he wanted that and stayed focused. And all of a sudden, this really brilliant hinge mechanism came into place.
Right.
Now, others will use it in the boardroom. Others will use it in a variety of ways. But it's really, if you want to transform yourself, you know, you've got to do that inner work, that inner joy.
What is your understanding, Ron, of your life purpose, and how have you brought it into your work?
You know, I got a few acres here, and it's somewhat of a Japanese garden, and I was out cutting a little dissectum of one of those short, lower types of Japanese maples, and I've done that enough that I don't have to think about it. And I found myself really in a very expanded place. And I caught myself listening to a conversation I was having with my great-grandsons. And the conversation was, they were asking me why I was leaving them a world that was not as good as it was when I came in. And of course, I was trying to explain this to them, and I realized halfway through that these are two sharp kids. They're not. They know I'm just, you know, giving them a bunch of bull. And I realized in that moment that I wanted to really affect and change the world and not leave it for my kids and all kids in worse shape than when I found it. And that really came to me that the only way to do that is to shift level of consciousness of the world. And I felt, in doing a lot of research, I found that the best way to do that is if I can shift the level of consciousness in enough leaders, we kind of could create the 100th monkey. system where enough change and allows everybody to change. So I want to change the consciousness of the world. I want to raise the consciousness of the world, and the best way to do that is through raising the consciousness of other leaders. And right. So that's what I'm in the middle of. That's what I'm doing.
It's exactly what my work is about. My nonprofit's Conscious World Foundation, and I understand my entire purpose for being on the planet is to raise the consciousness and usher in a more conscious world, a new humanity, a new society in which everyone can win. And we win because we're all working to help each other win. Mm-hmm. We're all uplifting one another. And I have to say, that's the world I want to live in. So that's part of why I'm creating it, is that, well, planet Earth could be different. We're at a pivot point. We can shift and become a completely higher, much higher consciousness in a very short period of time. Personally interested in how technology is going to help us do that.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a personal interest of mine. Well, what is a book that you would like to recommend for other entrepreneurs?
Well, my work involves really reprogramming the brain. That's one way to talk about it, raising levels of consciousness. And another way of talking about it, really developing the higher level leadership skills. Another way to talk about it. But a book that I read recently by Dawson Church, Mind to Matter, is something I'd really comfortably recommend, because it allows them to really understand how the brain's working. And once they understand, a lot of people, when I talk about big mind and accessing information, they go, well, that seems a little woo-woo. Dawson is really showing quite directly how that works, how the brain, right, when restructured, can access greater amounts of information from a more expanded level. So,
well, considering that Apple has recently become the first company to be worth $3 trillion, and Steve Jobs basically created what he created from accessing that big mind, I would say that's proof that maybe it's not so woo-woo, and maybe it's actually a real way to build, evolved businesses. I'm curious, what is your next summit? And what might be a challenge that you're going to have to overcome to reach that new mountaintop?
Well, that's interesting, because my next summit is really stepping back into the game. And, I've worked with a lot of millionaires, and certainly a large number of billionaires. And, it's like, how do I become part of the lives of those people who really want to become conscious leaders, who really want to change the world and make it a better place for all of us? So that is my summit, to look at this world, especially with COVID, where I can't go out and give talks and that type of thing. How do I really step into that? And I've spent it's a little odd, because I've spent my entire life really just accidentally bumping into amazing people and spending time with them. The list goes on and on. But having, in my late 50s and 60s, sort of pulled back and lived comfortably, and and do my boating, my golfing, and my working with clients on a more word of mouth basis, it's like, how do I step back into that game and really have a significant impact in that game, so that this world becomes a better place for all of us? That's it.
Well, and I love that as an inspired and conscious journey. I want to remind you to go to Ron Stotz, and we have the link on our show notes at consciousmillionaireshow.com, ronstotz.com, and take a look at his program, Creating Your Inspired Life. Well, my final question, I think I've now asked it over 3,000 times. What's the legacy you want to leave?
A more conscious planet, a better place for everyone to live. I'm in an age where I'll probably get out of this okay. But I've got grandkids, I've got kids, I've got grandkids, I've got great-grandkids. And I just see what a mess we're creating. And I want to make sure that that mess is really transformed into something that's absolutely amazing, supportive, and wonderful, that enhances not only my kids, but every kid's life.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to thank you for tuning in and listening, because it's not a podcast. It's not a show without you. Ron and I could talk and have a great time, but it's when you join in and then you take the 24-hour challenge and you put it into action, and go check out his program, Creating Your Inspired Life, and look at how you can utilize everything from today's episode. That's when it really matters for you. I want you to know that I love you, I care about you, and I am excited that you'll be joining me again for the next Conscious Millionaire. Ron, thank you for being our featured guest today.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it. And wishing the best to everybody.